explored by our ancestors extends from the Altai to the White Sea. The scientific expedition, Trails of Nomads, continues to unveil the path of our forefathers. A group of scientists led by pilgrim of the 21st century, Sapari Skakov, has already visited more than 40 countries. Scientists reveal the exciting secrets of the past. Watch an amazing story of a great journey in the Trails of Nomads program. Today's Trails of Nomads episode presents the oldest dome appeared in the territory of the Great Steppe 3 centuries before the formation of the Roman Empire. What archaeological site confirms this version? How did the reindeer antlers appear in the ancient city of Shirkeili Kosasar? Why did Syganak, which had the status of a capital for 2,000 years, was so important for the residents of Desht-i-Kipchak as well as the independence of the state? Settlements of people in the river valleys originate from the primitive communal system. Water has always been one of the main conditions for the development of any civilization. For example, the settlements on the shores of the Sirdarya are more than 2,000 years old. Trails of Nomads expedition team is set to study historical monuments related to that period. The Kizilorda region became the next stop of the scientific caravan.
Сыр өзені бұл ескі заманнан келе жатқан кәдімгі күллі мәдениеттің
The Sirdarya region is the oldest center of the trade, culture, and urban life. Various tribes, including Sakas and Huns, lived here along the river. They built a city on the shore of the river and left a great cultural heritage. We know about this thanks to the historical monuments discovered during archaeological excavations.
талай қалалар салды. Үлкен мәдениет бізге қалдырды артында. Оны қазір біз қазба жұмыстарынан кейін табылып жатқан заттардан білеміз.
This is Syganak gorge. The drawings depicted on the stones are centuries old. They cover the period from the beginning of the New Stone Age to the 18th century AD. According to the most conservative estimates, this is a reflection of the history lasting 2,500 years. They tell about customs, traditions, concepts, and worldview of the Sakas, Huns, and Turks.
2,5-3 мыңға жылға жуық уақыт тіршілік тоқталмаған. Алғашқы суреттер біздің заманымызға дейінгі.
People lived here for 2,500 to 3,000 years. The first drawings appeared in the beginning of the first millennium BC. There are also drawings dating back to the 18th century AD. Their main topics are life, traditions, and environment of that time. Some stones depict a great migration of peoples. On others, we see a fragment of a wedding, the arrival of a bride, and the engagement of young people.
Үлкен қалыңдық алып келе жатқан суреттер. Кейбір суреттерден ер мен әйелдің некелесуін көрсететін суреттер.
Looking at cave paintings, it seems as if one watches the life of people in ancient times in a movie. One learns their customs and traditions, way of life. In the Syganak gorge, there are about 10,000 similar creations, mostly drawings of animals, horses, camels, mountain sheep, deers, and wolves. There are also drawings of warriors and leaders.
Күйменің бейнесін көріп тұрсыздар, күйменің дөңгелектерінің тіпті несіне дейін, шанақтарына дейін күйменің шашақ.
Look at the drawing of the carriage. Here are all the details, wheels, frame, even the decorations are visible. You can see the harnessed animal and its rider. According to scientists, this figure is about 2,000 years old.
Бүгінгі күнімізден 2,000 жыл бұрын, 1,500 жыл бұрынғы бейнелер деп атап жүр.
Whatever museum of Kizilorda region you visit, everywhere you can find exhibits telling about the origin of the ancient civilization in the region. For example, here there is a unique ceramic tableware belonging to the Shirkeili culture. Manufacturing technology and the inscription made on it attract visitors. It is considered the oldest in the region. Scientists cannot decipher it. It is said that the inscription is very similar to the one made on the silver bow found near the famous Golden Man in the Issyk Mound. Shirkeili is a city located on the highest hill on the coast of Janadaria. Founded in approximately 4 to 2 centuries BC, it had the status of the capital. And in the 10th, 13th centuries of our era, it was already a developed city. This is evidenced by historical monuments found in its place during archaeological excavations. For example, the graves of the nobility or housings that, by the way, are not at all inferior to modern ones. They consist of several differently designated rooms. Here was a big trading center. This is evidenced by various objects found during excavations. They were imported from China, Iran, Iraq, and many other countries. Inhabitants of the Sirdarya Valley mastered the technology of pottery production in the steppe. A village of craftsmen was found 40 kilometers from Shirkeili. Its territory is about 4 hectares. Special kilns for burning clay and numerous warehouses were found in the village. While established production infrastructure is amazing. Balandi Mausoleum is another unparalleled legacy of Sakas. A unique architectural structure dating back to 4th, 2nd centuries BC had a dome. This was a real revolution in construction.
Біздің заманымызға дейінгі 4-ші ғасырда сақтар күмбездеп.
In the 4th century BC, the Sakas mastered the technology of domed construction of buildings. As in Rome, dome structures were built in the 1st century AD, that is 400 years before the Romans. This technology was owned by our ancestors.
Осы өңірде күмбездеп, ескерткішті күмбездеп салудың технологиясын игерген.
In the 2nd century BC, the waters of the Sirdarya River, changing the course of Janadaria, flowed into Kuandaria. As a result, the Shirkeili culture fell into decay, and the Desht-i-Kipchak culture, on the contrary, began to develop. And in the future, it was important not only for the Kazakhs, but in general for all the peoples of Central Asia. This is the period from the middle of the 1st millennium BC to the 9th century AD. That time, the urban civilization was especially dynamic. Now we know about 50 cities. Their founders were the Kangli tribes, about which there is enough information in Chinese sources. One of them says that up to 600,000 people live in the cities of Kangli. The army consists of approximately 120,000 soldiers. All these data indicate that there were huge metropolitan areas in the Aral region.
Бұл қамалдар сол кездегі болған хангуй.
These fortresses belong to the state of Xiongnu, which existed in antiquity. Its inhabitants were called Huns. These are the ancestors of the Huns who invaded Europe.
Европаға барған ғундардың енді арғы аталары деп айтуға болады.
Joly, which appeared in the 1st, 6th centuries, belongs to the Desht-i-Kipchak culture. It was located on an artificial hill. That is, people erected mound before building a city. It was necessary for effective defense in the case of an invasion of the enemy. Despite the fact that the city was small, it had a rather serious defense system. The thickness of the walls reached 3 meters.
Қорғаныс қабырғалары қалыңдығы 2-3 метрге жететін қорғаныс қабырғалар салған.
The walls of the fortress are well preserved. Their thickness is about 2 to 3 meters. Surprisingly, there are numerous holes for arrows. According to scientists, the defense system was very well thought out. Around the fortress, there was a plain developed irrigation network. Locals were engaged in farming and cattle breeding.
Ирригациялық жүйе дамып, айналасына егін шаруашылығымен және отырықшы мал шаруашылығымен айналысқан.
One of the most developed cities of Desht-i-Kipchak culture, Shirkeili Kosasar, its territory is 25 to 30 hectares. Around it, there is a fortress wall. Even now, its height is 2 to 3 meters. There are 2 completely identical fortifications inside the fortress on the eastern and western sides. In short, the defense system of the city was at a high level. Despite the fact that this grand structure was built at the time of the Kangli, it reached its perfection during the period of the Turks.
керамикалық материалдар көбінесе оғыз дәуіріне сәйкес келеді.
Ceramic materials mainly correspond to the Oghuz period, that is, the ancient city conveys the last time of its existence, the Turkic era. Generally, Shirkeili Kosasar ceased to exist at the end of the 8th, the beginning of the 9th century. The most interesting discoveries found during the excavations of the Oghuz cities are objects made in the form of a sheep. Protoma, that is the front of the body, the head of a sheep. In general, the sheep was considered sacred animals among the Turks. In the Turkic worldview, a sheep is a protector from the evil. Therefore, its image was widely used as an amulet. For example, this item was put on the hearth. That is, it symbolized wealth in the house. A lot of such artifacts were found during excavations of historical monuments of the Desht-i-Kipchak culture.
Мысалы, Египетте Луксор қаласында Карнаки үлкен сондай комплекс бар. Сонда көшемен келе жатқан уақытында екі жағында.
For example, in Egypt, there is a large complex in Luxor and Karnak. There were stone sculptures with a sheep's head along one street on both sides. They date from about 3rd, 4th centuries BC. Later, the cultures that were called sheep and goat horns were widespread in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. There is a similar culture in Transcaucasia, in Azerbaijan, and in Armenia. Well, in Kazakhstan, it is widespread.
Мәдениеттің біреуі. Ондай мәдениет мынау Закавказьеде бар, Грузия, Азербайжан, Арменияда. Ал енді қазақтың арасында бұл өте көп тараған.
The population of Desht-i-Kipchak led almost all types of modern households. There were numerous cultivated fields around the settlement. In the pottery found during the excavations, fragments of various crops were found: rice, wheat, barley. There are also artifacts proving that the inhabitants were engaged in fishing, hunting, and cattle breeding. It is surprising that the bones of large animals, horses, camels, and cows, were used as a building material. For that time, it was a real technological progress.
Бұл ескерткіштен мынау солтүстік Сібірде кездесетін бұғының мүйізі алынды. Яғни бұл жерде
Reindeer antlers were found here in this historical monument. This indicates that local people worked closely with neighboring regions. These are mainly trade relations. There was also a mint during the Khwarezm Shah period. Thanks to these coins, we determined the date of creation of the monument. This is about the 9th century. However, of course, more in-depth studies are needed. It is possible that the lower limits of the chronological framework of this monument reach the 1st century AD.
төмен қарай кетеді. Біздің заманымыздың бірінші ғасырларына дейін баруы мүмкін.
The development of cities belonging to the Desht-i-Kipchak culture from 9th to 10th centuries gradually went to decline. The reason was a strong drought in the area of the Kuan Darya River, which even changed its flow. As a result, the modern course of the Sir Darya was formed. Many new cities began to appear on its coasts.
Сырдария енді адамзаттың өркендеген.
The Sir Darya region, I would say, was at one time one of the developed oases of mankind. But as we know from the history of all this, it all perished after the invasion of Genghis Khan. Almost all cities along Sir Darya were razed to the ground.
Орны ғана қалған.
This is Syganak, an ancient city that is full of secrets. For almost 2,000 years, it had the status of a capital in the state of Kangli in Desht-i-Kipchak, Akorda, the Khanate of Abelkair, the Kazakh Khanate. For the people of Desht-i-Kipchak, the loss of Syganak was more than a loss. Therefore, every time, after numerous devastating raids, the inhabitants always restored it. The city was a strategically important center of politics, economy, and culture. Arab scholar al-Maqdisi, who lived in the 10th century, considered Syganak the twin of Otterar. Another scientist of the 12th, 13th centuries, Hisamiddin al-Syganaki, praised the city in his poems. According to him, if we had a second life, he would no doubt have lived in Syganak.
Қала өте үлкен, территориясы 18 гектар аумақты қамтиды. Биіктігі 3 метр болып қалып қойған. Қалашықтың
The city is very big. The territory is about 18 hectares. The height of the fortress is about 3 meters. A citadel was located in the southeast of the city. In the 10th, 12th centuries, the city was the political, scientific, cultural center of the region. Many world-famous scientists came out from here. The city was destroyed after the Mongol invasion during the Khwarezm Shah Mohammed period.
Хандығы тарих сахнасынан кетіп, моңғол шапқыншылығы тұсында қала түгелдей қирайды.
The first information about Syganak refers to the end of the 10th century. The book, The Boundaries of the World from East to West, describes the city. There, the city is called Suna. In the 11th, 12th centuries, during the period of the Karakanid state, there were a lot of written sources telling about Syganak. However, after the Mongol invasion, the city was not mentioned anywhere for 100 years. Since the early 20s of the 14th century, Syganak reappeared in the historical sources. Then information about the release into circulation of money New Syganak was spread. It happened in the period of Akorda. Syganak became the capital of the eastern part of the state. The descendants of Orda Yezen and Toka Temer ruled at that time. Later, the Shaibanids joined the power struggle. As a result of the confrontation, Abilhayr Khanate was formed. However, part of the population headed by Jibek and Carriage did not obey him. And in the middle of the 15th century, they founded a separate state, the Kazakh Khanate. After a while, Jibek and Carriage led the campaign against Abilhayr and conquered all the cities along Sirdarya, including Syganak, which later became the first capital of the Kazakh Khanate. Syganak was a city with a very advanced infrastructure, including defensive one. The city existed until the beginning of the 18th century. It had a fortress wall up to 10 meters. There was a deep ditch. Its place is still preserved. Kipchaks were the main inhabitants of Syganak. This is known from Arabic manuscripts. In the 12th century, the local population adopted Islam. It was a time of spiritual ascent. During this period, many scientists of the region made a great contribution to the development of world science. That is, Syganak, previously considered a major international trade and economic center, became a scientific and cultural city as well. Therefore, it has always been crowded. As the chronicler of Khan Shaibani, Fazla ibn Ruzbihan, wrote, up to 500 camels were slaughtered every day in Syganak. By the evening, there was not a bit of meat left. In addition, a huge amount of goods were sold here during a day, approximately up to 500 loaded camels. Military armor and variety of equipment of nomads were most expensive. Our ancestors understood this very well and were the engines of technical and technological progress in this area. As for urban construction, even the fact that there were already special stone walkways on the streets similar to the current sidewalks says a lot. The houses consisted of several rooms for various purposes. There were special facilities designed for washing. In other words, Syganak was once one of the centers of the development of world civilization. However, in the 18th century, the city was again completely destroyed.
Қазір қазбаның орнына үлкен керуен сарайдың немесе бір үлкен ғимараттың.
We're now witnessing a great archaeological work. Excavations are underway at the site where the caravanserai was once located. In one of the halls of the building, the floor is completely lined with burnt bricks. That is due to the properties of such a material. A certain temperature was maintained in the room. In addition, burnt brick was practical in terms of cleanliness.
Егер үстінен жабылған болса, күйдірілген кірпіш көлеңке жерде тұратын болса, температураны сақтап тұрады.
Not only the city of Syganak, but also other cities located in the Sirdarya Valley had a strategic importance and were an important link in the development and prosperity of the entire region. Therefore, there were frequent wars. In the period of the Kazakh Khanate, several campaigns were launched to return these cities to the great heritage of their ancestors. The story about the work of the Trails of Nomads scientific expedition in the Kizloda region will continue. Particularly in the next episode, you will learn about the famous Asan Kaige, who on his camel named Zhelmaya was searching for the paradise land of Jeruik. Is he really buried on the bank of the Sirdarya, and what documents confirm this? Where is the grave of Korkut Ata? Watch the next episode to find out the answers to these and many other questions.